Hey everybody, I'm Heidi from Hands Occupied here with another knitting video for you today. In this video, I'm going to walk you through some useful tips for weaving in your ends in Intarsia knitting. Especially of use is going to be the part about making sure there's no little holes at color joins, knowing which direction to weave in the ends to make that happen, and where to weave in your ends for the least visual impact on the right side of your work. Let's dive in. For those of you that don't like weaving in your ends, let me present to you this very cute pumpkin sweater. I knit it for myself like 4 or 5 years ago now. It's got a little Intarsia motif on the front. I love knitting Intarsia. This sweater I love so much it even was what I was wearing in my author photo for my book. But it was hiding a secret. I never wove in the ends. So if you're putting off weaving in your ends, just know that you're not alone. In Intarsia knitting, good tension is the key to achieving a correct looking finished design. That is to say, not squished or stretched. Good tension comes from knitting yourself a large gauge swatch and blocking it to confirm you're knitting the correct amount of stitches in rows per inch. Good Intarsia tension also comes from a couple more things. Good technique when you're working an Intarsia join, and correctly / thoughtfully / carefully weaving in your ends. This video is about weaving in Intarsia ends, but there's also a video about working better Intarsia joins on my channel if you're looking for that. Intarsia knitting often leaves us with a few, or a lot, of ends to weave in. Weaving in an end incorrectly can leave you with little eyelet-looking holes where new colors are joined, and weaving in an end in the wrong place can result in a too bulky appearance on the right side, affecting the appearance of the finished design. I realize it's hard when teachers say things like, affecting the appearance of the finished design, because it's subjective. And by the time you're weaving in ends, you might be a little over dealing with Intarsia tails and color work in general, so you might just want to finish your project so you can wear it already. I get it. I'm always trying to remind myself that finished is better than perfect, so if you're ready to go speed mode on your nearly finished sweater, go for it. Most people will not notice nor care. Trust me, the Intarsia part is impressive enough, not to mention the fact that you've just knit yourself this cool garment or whatever it may be. If you're wanting to take some more time on your ends, that's allowed too. I design a lot of Intarsia patterns for publication, including knitting the samples, so I strive to make the garment that will be photographed as polished as possible. Here are my best tips for weaving in ends to achieve really clean looking Intarsia. Begin by spreading out all of your ends on the wrong side of your work. Ensure none are tangled and work in sections to weave in your ends. I find it works well to weave in non-Intarsia tails first to get them out of the way. This can be woven in as you would any other knitting ends, either with duplicate stitch or into edge stitches. Next, let's talk about avoiding holes where new colors were joined. When you're joining a new color in Intarsia, it's not unlike running out of one skein of yarn and adding a new one, but if you don't interlock the two colors together, you'll end up with a hole in your work. The first step when weaving in these ends is interlocking them so they have a join, then weaving in the ends. When weaving in Intarsia ends, I have found using whip stitch has the best results, and it leaves the wrong side of your work looking like it's outlined in candy canes. To work a whip stitch to weave in an end, interlock your ends, then you bring the tip of your yarn needle over the nearest Intarsia float and draw the yarn end under it. Continue working in the same direction until your tail is sufficiently woven in. Whenever you can, I recommend weaving Intarsia ends into edge stitches or into Intarsia floats / joins. Duplicate stitch does work, but with some yarns it's unfortunately really obvious where you've woven in an end. P.S. This can also be relevant for weaving in non-Intarsia ends, particularly if it's duplicate stitch in a sea of stockinette stitch. When it's clear you're running out of a color of yarn, simply change skeins at the nearest edge or Intarsia join. Then you can interlock the extra tails together and work the ends into an edge or Intarsia join. This will leave you with some longer yarn scraps, but a cleaner finished project. Speaking of cleaner Intarsia, I have one more note about duplicate stitch. Sometimes you find a few stitches with undesirable tension when you go to weave in Intarsia ends. If you've worked a slightly loose stitch in your project, you can intentionally weave in an end of yarn in the same color using duplicate stitch at the back of it to help hide the issue a little. Blocking your finished project will also help. When you're weaving Intarsia ends into joins, you might find that one float may be a little baggier than you'd prefer. In that case, you can give the end you're weaving in an extra wrap or two around that loose float. In my experience, this can help reduce the extra unwanted tension at the right side of the work. Different yarns, depending on their fiber content and how they're made, can respond better to this trick than others. With really detailed intarsia, you might find yourself with several ends to weave in one place. Avoid weaving in more than 2 to 3 maximum yarn ends into the same intarsia floats. It gets so bulky at the back that it can be visible on the front of the garment, especially if it has negative ease or is worn tightly. Before I let you go, I wanted to show you what it looks like when you weave in your ends in the wrong direction. If you can see here, this stitch looks like more of a horseshoe, open at the bottom, than a teardrop, closed at the bottom. The legs of this stitch were woven in the opposite direction of what they should be, and now there's this weird area where the tension doesn't match the rest of the knitting. Isn't that interesting? And those were some of my best tips and tricks for weaving in ends in intarsia knitting. If you've got other tips and tricks or questions, go ahead and reach out in the comments. Give us a like if you liked what you saw, and subscribe for even more video tutorials. I've been Heidi. Thanks so much for watching.